Hello students, in this video we are going to learn division of a whole number by a whole number where the dividend is less than the divisor. To understand it more, we will explain this lesson through examples. Let's start with example 1. Set up and calculate 2 divided by 4. Here in this division operation, 2 is the dividend and 4 is the divisor. We are dividing a smaller number by a greater number. The dividend here is less than the divisor. And when we set up a division operation, the dividend should be placed to the right and the divisor should be placed to the right always. It doesn't matter if the dividend is less or more or equal to the divisor, so be careful. Now let's set up this division. 2 is the dividend, we place it to the right, and 4 is the divisor, we place it to the left. Now let's divide 2 by 4. If I have 2 students, how many groups of 4 students can I make? Of course, 2 students are not enough to make a group of 4 students, so I can make 0 groups, and 0 students will participate. So remark, if the dividend is less than the divisor, we start by placing a 0 in the quotient. It means that the whole part of the quotient is 0. So here, as I said, 2 is not enough, 2 is less than 4. So 0 students will participate and I can make 0 groups. So we start by placing a 0 in the quotient. Now let's find the remainder. 2 minus 0 equals 2. Then we continue the division by adding a useless 0, 0.0 in the dividend. So next to the dividend 2, we add 0.0. And before we slide the 0, the 10th digit, we need to add a decimal point in the quotient. Then we slide the 0. 20 divided by 4. 20 is a multiple of 4, and 4 times 5 equals 20. So we write 5 in the quotient. Then we find the remainder. 0 minus 0 equals 0. 2 minus 2 equals 0. And the division has ended since the remainder is 0. And 2 divided by 4 equals 0.5. It's an exact quotient. Now attention. 2 divided by 4 is not the same as 4 divided by 2. In fact, 4 divided by 2 equals 2. So here when we set up 4 divided by 2, 4 is the dividend, we place it to the right, and 2 is the divisor, we place it to the left. If we have 4 students, how many groups of 2 students can we make? Of course, 4 is a multiple of 2. And 2 times 2 equals 4. We can make 2 groups of 2, and the remainder is 0. And 2 divided by 4 equals 0.5. So here, be careful. Don't set up this division in a wrong way. Don't place the 4 here in the place of the dividend and the 2 in the place of the divisor. So be careful. The dividend, the first number in the division operation, is always the dividend. It should be placed to the right, and the divisor should be placed to the left. Here we notice also when we divide 4 by 2, we can make 2 groups. The answer is greater than 1. But when we divide a smaller number by a greater number, the answer here, 0.5, is less than 1. It's always the case. When you divide a smaller number by a greater number, the quotient is always less than 1. Now let's continue with example 2. Set up and calculate 1 divided by 8. So 1 is the dividend, we place it to the right, and 8 is the divisor, we place it to the left. Now let's divide 1 by 8. 1 is less than 8, so 0 will participate, and we can make 0 groups of 8. And the remainder is 1 minus 0 equals 1. Now we add 0.0 to the dividend, and before we slide the 0, we place a decimal point in the quotient, and we obtain 10. 10 divided by 8, 10 is not multiple of 8, we have 8 just before the 10, and 8 times 1 equals 8, and when we subtract mentally, it's 2. Now the remainder is not 0 yet, we add another useless 0, we slide it. Of course, we don't place another decimal point, we place it once only. 20 divided by 8, 20 is not multiple of 8, we have 16 before the 8, and 8 times what equals 16, it's 2. And the remainder, let's subtract mentally, 20 minus 16, it's 4. Of course, you can borrow, but you can also do it mentally. The remainder is not 0 yet, we add another useless 0, we slide it, we obtain 40. 40 is a multiple of 8, and 8 times what equals 40? It's times 5. And the remainder here, it's 0. And the division has ended. 1 divided by 8 equals 0.125. And the answer is less than 1. So attention, 8 divided by 1 equals 8. But 1 divided by 8 equals 0.125. So be careful here, and when you divide 1 by 8, don't do 8 divided by 1 and write 8 in the quotient. So be careful, 8 divided by 1 and 1 divided by 8, they have completely different answers. So don't make this mistake. Now let's continue with example 3. Set up and calculate 3 divided by 25. So 3 is the dividend, we place it to the right, and 25 is the divisor. Now let's start. 3 divided by 25, of course, with 3 students, I cannot make a group of 25 students. The students are not enough. We have a very small number of students, so 0 will participate, and we can make 0 groups. 3 minus 0 equals 3. To continue, we add 0.0 to the dividend, and before we slide the 0, the 10th digit, we place a decimal point in the quotient. When we slide the 0, we obtain 30. With 30 students, how many groups of 25 students can I make? Of course, I can make only one group. Just before the 30, we have 25 as multiple of 25, and 25 times 1 equals 25, and mentally the remainder is 5. The remainder is not 0 yet, so I add another useless 0 in the dividend, and I slide the 0, I obtain 50. Here I notice that 50 is a multiple of 25 because 25 times 2 equals 50, so I write 50. And I write 2 in the quotient. Then I find the remainder, and if it's of course 0, and my division has ended. 3 divided by 25 equals 0.12. It's less than 1. So of course here it's very important not to set up the division wrong and write 25 here in the dividend place and 3 in the divisor place. So be careful. Now let's continue with our final example, example 4. Set up and calculate 21 divided by 35. 21 is the dividend, I place it to the right, and 35 is the divisor, I place it to the left. Of course, with 21 students, I cannot make a group of 35 students. The number of students is not enough, so 0 students will participate, and I can make 0 groups. Now let's find the remainder. 21 minus 0, it's equal, of course, to 21. To continue the division, I add 0.0 in the dividend. And before I slide the 0, I need to place a decimal point in the quotient. After sliding the 0, I obtain 210. Now let's divide 210 by 35. So in case you forgot how to divide by a two-digit number, let's remember. So if you want to use the first method, estimation method, to guess, let's guess what is the quotient of the division of 210 by 35. And to do so, we hide the ones digit in 210 and the ones digit in 35. And we divide 21 by 3. We know that 3 times 7 is 21. So I'm guessing that the quotient might be 7. Of course, I don't write 7 immediately. I need to check on my scratch paper if it's correct by multiplying 35 by the estimated quotient, by the quotient that I guessed. It might be 7. Let's multiply. 7 times 5 is 35. I write 5, I carry 3. 7 times 3 equals 21 plus 3, it's 24. So 245 is greater than 210. The number should be equal or less than 210. So it's wrong. Since 7 is a wrong quotient, so I need to try the one just before. It means the 6. I multiply 35 by 6. 6 times 5 is 30. I write 0, I carry 3. 6 times 3, 18 plus 3, it's 21. So I notice that 210 is in fact a multiple of 35. So I write 210, and 35 times 6 equals 210. So I write 6 in the quotient, and the remainder is 0. And my division has ended. Of course, there's another method to find the quotient 6. If you don't want to use the estimation method, you can write on the scratch paper the multiples of 35 until you find a multiple of 35 that is equal or less than 210. So you start by 0, then you add 35 each time, 35, 70, 105, 140, 175, until you reach 210, which is a multiple of 35. And to find the quotient 6, I ask myself 35 times what equals 0? It's times 0. 35 times 1 is 35, then times 2, times 3, times 4, times 5, and 35 times 6 equals 210, and I found my quotient. And 21 divided by 35 equals 0.6. It's less than 1. So this is the end of our video. I would like you to repeat all the examples, rewatch them until the concept is fully understood. And thank you for watching.